Right. I think we can squeeze in the discussion of within the chamber components by 8:25 your time, 8:25 my time, or latest 8:30. But we can reschedule for tomorrow morning if you are available the same time as today. Then that would be perfect. I can go over the competitive landscape and who are the big vendors for these components by tool time.
Okay, I think that'll work. I think that'll work fine. Okay, great. So let's please proceed in the discussion to the next point that you'd like to take it.
Sure. So after etch, basically to just continue complete this discussion, we were discussing about wet etch, dry etch, and then deposition. Deposition tools are also very similar to the dry etch tool. So I don't have to elaborate on what material properties are required. It just runs in a different regime. So that's the only thing I will mention. So for deposition, typically, as I mentioned, for etch, you are looking at thermal cycling between 50 to 350 C. Whereas for deposition, the thermal cycling that you are looking for is between 50 C to about 450 to 500 C. So if you want to think about a material that can be used both in the dry etch as well as your deposition tool, then the regimes that you are thinking about in terms of thermal cycling is a little different. It's 50 C to 500 C as opposed to 50 centigrade to 350 centigrade for the H2. So that is by far the biggest difference between the polyimide or any kind of engineered plastic that is used within a deposition tool versus an etch tool. So so that is one point that is good to keep in your mind. So that pretty much sums up the etch and deposition. After that, I wanted to discuss the furnace real quickly because the furnace is also a temperature-driven kind of functionality. And then, I will go into the CMP and lithography, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So the furnace essentially is, as the name sounds, a furnace is like a hot area essentially. And what happens in a furnace is within the furnace you load. It's a multi-wafer process. Usually, if you look at the process chamber for etch or deposition or lithography or CMP, they are a single wafer system. If one wafer is processed at a time, you could have multiple chambers on the same platform, so you could do multiple wafers. But one process chamber focuses on or processes a single wafer. Furnace is basically more of it can process 50 wafers at the same time. So essentially, what you have is you have this huge stack, and then you place the wafers into these slots, these 50 slots, and then you process those 50 wafers at the same time. Now, when you have these slots, basically for wafer handling, these slots actually at this point I'm not sure what they are made of, but they are made of some kind of engineering plastic, but obviously not PFA or PTFE. Now, the furnace usually runs some kind of deposition process or some kind of burn process, which uses temperatures of as high as 750 to 800 C. The furnace is a very high temperature process, but everything within the furnace in terms of the 50 slots that will hold your 50 wafers, and in terms of basically your peripherals, the wafer handlers, the chemical system, the chemical silane. Let's say for polysilicon deposition you would use silane. So the chemical deposition system, everything within the furnace needs to have a high temperature budget of about for most applications within the furnace, if you can go to 600 if you can go as high to 600 to 650 C, you can get like 70% of the applications within the furnace, 70-75%. But if you can truly get to 800 C, then you can get the full furnace business in terms of polymers or engineered polymers or engineered plastic.